Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down one of history's greatest upsets, how 13 American colonies, with really not much more than an idea, managed to take on the entire British Empire and, somehow, win.
All right, let's just get right to it, because this is the big question, right? How in the world did this ragtag group of colonies, farmers, merchants, actually defeat the biggest superpower on the planet?
I mean, if you look at it on paper, this was a total mismatch. It's not even close. You've got the British Empire, with the world's largest navy and a professional army, versus the colonies, who have basically no navy and just volunteer militias. A global economic powerhouse versus a bunch of farmers with limited resources. It really is the classic David versus Goliath story. So you have to ask, what was their secret? Well, it turns out it wasn't just one thing. It was more like a three-part formula for pulling off the impossible.
Okay, so ingredient number one, and this is probably the most important part of the whole thing. It wasn't a bigger army or more money, it was an idea. A really powerful, even radical idea that brought all these different people together and made them willing to risk absolutely everything.
And this wasn't something that happened overnight. It was more of a slow burn, building up for over a decade. The British Parliament kept passing these laws. First, the Stamp Act, taxing paper. Then the Townshend Acts, taxing things they used every day. Then the Tea Act, and finally the Intolerable Acts, which literally shut down Boston's port. With each new law, it felt like the screws were tightening, and that feeling of injustice just grew and grew.
And listen to the language they were using. This quote from a Boston paper? Wow, they're talking about not wanting to be slaves. This shows you it went way beyond just being angry about taxes on tea. For them, this was a fight for their basic freedom. They genuinely feared losing all their rights and becoming completely powerless under the thumb of the British government.
So all that simmering anger, eventually it just boiled over. On July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of Independence basically drew a line in the sand. It transformed everything. This wasn't just a protest anymore, this was a revolution. They were saying, we're done with your rules, we're going to build our own country, from the ground up.
All right, so you've got this powerful idea. That's ingredient number one. But let's be real, an idea alone isn't enough. To make a revolution stick, you have to prove you can actually win. You need a victory, a big one. Something that tells the world, hey, we're serious about this.
And that victory, it came right here, in the forests of upstate New York, a place called Saratoga. Now this wasn't just some small skirmish. No, this was the one. This was the battle that was going to change the entire course of the war.
And to really get what a big deal this was, you got to picture what warfare was like back then. It was absolute chaos. You're talking about two armies lining up shoulder to shoulder and just firing muskets at each other through these thick, dense clouds of smoke. These guns weren't even very accurate. It was really a battle of wills. Who was going to break and run first?
And this number? This is what happened at Saratoga. Almost 6,000 professional soldiers, British regulars and their German allies, surrendered. They just laid down their weapons. An entire British field army was just gone, wiped off the map. It was unbelievable. So yeah, this wasn't just some regular victory. This was a shockwave that was felt all around the world. Think about it. A bunch of rebels just went head-to-head with one of the best armies in the world and captured the whole thing. The message was loud and clear. This American Revolution, it was for real. And that shockwave, it traveled all the way across the Atlantic Ocean, and it landed right in the lap of one of Britain's oldest enemies. And that brings us to the third and final ingredient for winning this revolution, getting a little help from a friend, a very, very powerful friend.
You see, France was still smarting from a huge loss to Great Britain in a war just a decade or so earlier. They were looking for payback, big time. So when the American colonies started causing trouble for the British, France saw the perfect opportunity to get some revenge.
And here's how it all came together. France was already secretly sending some weapons and supplies, kinda testing the waters. You had Benjamin Franklin over in Paris working his diplomatic magic, but the victory at Saratoga, that was the proof of concept. That was the moment the French said, okay, these guys can actually win. It convinced them to stop hedging their bets and go all in. And let me tell you, this alliance was a complete game changer. All of a sudden, the Americans had thousands of professional French troops on their side. They had money, and crucially, they had a navy. This wasn't just a colonial rebellion anymore. It had just exploded into a global war, and now Britain was stretched thin, having to fight all over the world.
So there you have it. The formula is complete. You've got the big idea worth fighting for, you've got the major military victory to prove you're legit, and now you've got a superpower ally ready to help deliver the final knockout punch.
And that final punch landed at Yorktown. Here's what happened. The combined American and French armies managed to trap the main British army on this little peninsula. But the key, the absolute key, was the French Navy. The French fleet sailed in, beat the British ships, and sealed off the only escape route by sea. The trap was set and there was no way out.
That surrender at Yorktown, that was pretty much the end of the line for Britain. It took another couple of years to sort everything out, but the war officially came to an end with the Treaty of Paris. And isn't it fitting that the peace treaty was signed in the very same city where that game-changing alliance was born?
This wasn't just any treaty either. This was monumental. For the first time, Great Britain officially recognized the United States as an independent country. It drew the new borders, opening the door for westward expansion. This was it, the official birth of a new nation on the world stage.
So, let's wrap this up with one final thought. The idea, that was the spark. The win at Saratoga proved the fire could really burn, but you have to wonder, what if France had said no? Without that crucial support, that game-changing alliance, could that revolutionary fire have been stamped out before it ever really had a chance to spread?